thank you so much for the nice introduction. Thank you all for being here, for stepping up and taking the responsibility. That's the most important thing I can say to you. And if I said nothing else and sat down, I would want that to stay with you. Right now, stepping up and taking the responsibility is the most important thing. Senator Becker, enjoyed your presentation. I came in after you started, but thank you for representing us, not just the state Senate, but the state of California, in the climate process that just went on globally, and it's so important for California to continue to lead, as he indicated, as you all know, and we're doing everything we can to lead. But I want you to know that Senator Becker has been absolutely relentless. I had the experience, I don't know if it's an advantage at all, of serving a local government at the school board level and then the city level, San Jose, big city, like Councilmember Cohen here, 8 years there, and then 12 years on the Board of Supervisors, and then the state Senate. And so I felt like I landed on my feet running when I got there, especially on issues like climate, which we have worked on here pretty aggressively in local government. And I was just amazed by Senator Becker coming out of the private sector, which is a wonderful thing. That's how I started too many years ago. But being absolutely relentless in the state Senate in terms of pursuing climate goals for us and climate goal implementation. That's really where we're trying to go next. Not just saying this is where we need to be by 2030 or 2035 or 2050, but these are the moving parts that we need to start solving right now. And there's a lot of conflict about some of those moving parts because people concerned about a lot of different things. You've heard the expression, the devil's in the detail, and so that's sometimes the job that we get to do. I want to thank Tarash and Krishna for not only inviting me this evening, but also in 2019, as was mentioned in my introduction, to the first summit. And I know last year got disrupted, obviously, like so many things, but thank you for pulling it together this year, and everybody else on the team who's been helping. I think they were all just thanked a few minutes ago. I'm really pleased to hear about your own efforts around environmental literacy. One of the things I do want to say about local government is, especially here, and especially for all of you, is that it creates a tremendous opportunity to essentially set precedent, to chart a new course that can and sometimes will be adopted by state government, by national governments, and even globally. I had all those experiences in local government. But one of the things that really has taken until just now to percolate up was something that we started here a few years back, several years ago, it was originally called the Cortese Kids Climate Club. It became the Silicon Valley Kids Climate Club, and it was in the process of being installed at the Tech Museum so that every young person that comes into the Tech, which is what it's called now, I think, would have essentially this interactive curriculum on climate. And it only takes, as most of you know, to pass along the key aspects of what we're up against as humanity. About 15 minutes, for a third grader, fourth grader, or fifth grader, just to get them from not being able to raise their hand and give a working definition of greenhouse gas emissions. 15 minutes later, they can all raise their hand, right, and give that definition. But we're not doing that, and we need to do that. There were several pieces of legislation in the new regulations, especially in education code in terms of curriculum, to start that process finally. We started that process just as a council member and county supervisor, again, like local officials here, where local officials and your state senators and your state assembly members can essentially walk into a classroom almost any time with the permission of a principal or a superintendent or a classroom teacher and have an audience, right? And I knew that, and we started doing that. But I can do 1 or 2 or 3 classrooms a month. 15 minutes times 3, 45 minutes. We have 500,000 kids that need to be exposed to this curriculum. And so one of the things I'm very, very happy about is having the opportunity now as a state senator to help lead in that area, along with Assembly members Rivas, Colorado, Ward, and others. I announced my commitment to introduce legislation on climate change education in the 2022 And I think it is the opportune time to work between the legislature, the California Department of Education, and local school districts to sufficiently fund. As Senator Becker said, we have dollars to do this. And we're going to have more dollars for education this year, perhaps, than we'll ever have going forward and that we've ever had in the past. I won't get into the details of that, but the budget is bound in such a way that education essentially is going to get the lion's share of all of the surplus this year. So let's do this. Let's do this. I think that every great movement I've seen, both as a resident here in this area all my life and as an elected official, especially at the local level, has come from the education of young people in our community first and foremost. If you look at, everyone in this room is too young to remember this, but there's a few that can, and it's mostly the elected officials. There was a time here, right here in Silicon Valley, when cigarette smoking was ubiquitous. It was everywhere. The movement to change that came through an education campaign for young people. It was young people who started to tell adults, who started to tell their parents, not anymore, not anymore. Don't do that around me. Recycling, a little closer to home here in terms of the environment, right? San Jose, the city of San Jose, became the model for the state of California in terms of reducing its landfill waste by setting up the state's first municipal recycling program. Was it mandated? No. It's a volunteer program. You know, today, to this day, it's still a volunteer program. You ever think about that? It is, I think, in every city here. Nobody tells you that if you don't recycle, the recycling police is going to come and give you a citation, right? How did we do that then? How do we get to this point where all of a sudden, in a fairly short time, we've diverted what used to be 100% of our waste to landfills to the point now that we're diverting about 70% of that or more in the municipalities. And some would argue we're basically at the point where we're at a functional 100% through education. I can't think of a young person in school today who's not educated on the fact that this goes into recycling, right, and other things don't. This is what we need to do, and this is what I think you are doing. It's more than what you're doing, it's who you're being in the world right now. And that is what's critical. How you be in the world right now is the movement that has to regenerate our entire society, not just here in Silicon Valley, the state of California, but as Senator Becker was pointing out, as you already know, globally. I don't think there's any other way to do it than to take the education system that we have here and abroad and start teaching that there is no other way, and it has to happen now. So that's what we're trying to do in the state of California. That's what I intend to be fighting for this year. I want you to know that my first 3 bills that I introduced almost exactly a year ago were climate decarbonization bills. We're going to keep working on that. And we're going to keep working on other issues like EV charging stations in multifamily communities, which is a huge, huge issue right now. You will see us introduce legislation in those areas again this year. But I want you to know it's tough sledding. And if you're thinking about building decarbonization as something maybe over here and not right in the lane that you're focused on, most of us are focused on the things that we can see happening right now, like the conversion to electric vehicles. But remember, we have a housing crisis, and the state and local governments are starting to do everything they can to produce more housing, especially affordable housing. As they produce that housing, as we produce that housing, it happens in increments of 20 or 30,000 homes at a time. We're hoping for 600,000 more homes in the Bay Area so that you'll be able to have a place to live here and won't have to move away. Just over the next planning horizon, 600,000 homes over the next 7 years. If those homes are built the same old way, with the same concrete that Senator Becker was talking about, with natural gas instead of electricity, how long are they going to be around? How long will people be living in those 600,000 homes? 2 or 3 generations? While they emit emissions that continue to create a problem, not just for the planet, but for humanity. So we get it in the state legislature, that these are big issues and we need to press. But people are fearful. And I want you to think of this as young people, and I'll close here. If your uncle or your neighbor was working in the fossil fuel industry, maybe they work as a welder on natural gas pipelines. Maybe that's what that person does. And they hear and see all of us saying, we need to stop doing that. What do we say to that person about how they're going to make a living, how they're going to support their family, how they're going to pay for their house payment or their rent? What do we say to them? We have to have real answers. We have to have real answers for them. We have to have just as much detail and thoughtfulness about how we transition the workforce in a just way so that nobody's neighbor or uncle or mother or father becomes displaced or unemployed by something that we're doing that is not only good but has to be done. We have to do both. Otherwise, we're creating dissension amongst us. Anytime you have fear in politics, fear for your livelihood, fear for your well-being, you're going to have serious political dissension. And I think part of what we need to do and you need to do as part of this movement is help take down that fear by giving people real answers about how this is going to be okay for them in their day-to-day lives. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.